This podcast is sponsored by Chapters. We're passionate about being the best. Get to know us and how we became Canada's leading bookstore at www.chapters.indigo.ca. So for this podcast, I'm going to be talking about the Book of Negroes by Lawrence Hill, which is the ISU book that I chose. So a little bit of a summary of the book. We start off with Aminata Diallo, the daughter of a jeweler and a midwife, who's kidnapped at the age of 11 from her village in Bayo in West Africa and forced to walk for 3 months to the sea. Even before she's placed on the ship, she vows that one day she will return. A boy her age, Chekura, has been forced to assist the slave traders, but is later sent abroad just like the rest. He becomes Aminata's unlikely friend. After several horrific months of voyage across the Atlantic Ocean, including a slave revolt, Aminata arrives in South Carolina, where she begins a new life as a slave. She's taken under the wing of a fellow slave named Georgia, who helps her learn English. Seeing her intelligence and potential, a fellow Muslim slave named Maimed secretly teaches her to read and write. Chekura and Aminata reunite and have a baby together, but it unfortunately gets sold off by Aminata's owner. Aminata is handed over to a Jewish man named Solomon Lindo, who moves her to Charlestown. Aminata grows close to Lindo and his wife, who allow her to read and write openly. While in New York, during the rioting at the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War, Aminata is able to escape from Lindo. Aminata arrives in Shelburne, Nova Scotia, and begins to work in the black community of Birchtown. Shortly after, a British naval officer named Captain John Clarkson comes to the black Birchtown communities, promising a better land reserved for them in Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, the black communities attempt to establish Freetown despite the strict rules of the British. As an old woman, Aminata finds herself taking a voyage one more time to England to present the account of her life so it may help abolish the slave trade. So Aminata's character is an interesting one. She's so strong-willed and inspiring. Even from a young age, she uses her midwifery skills to her advantage. Despite all the sadness and loss during the trip across the Atlantic Ocean, Aminata allows herself to stay brave and strong throughout the journey, unlike many that were on that boat. After all the slave work and ownership, Aminata is able to keep her dignity and knowledge and always put it to good use. After her daughter gets taken away, she manages to stay strong and move forward in the direction she has always wanted to go. Finally, she arrives in London with only one goal in mind: to show other people the inequality that goes along with slave trades in Africa and also all around the world. Her voice, now stronger than ever, is the one that will never be forgotten. So the archetype of the Great Mother is described as all the positive aspects of the Earth Mother that are associated with the life principle. So these are things like protection, growth, abundance, nourishment, and kind of all of those ideas that go along with life. So next, I just wanted to kind of talk about how these qualities are represented in the Book of Negroes, especially within Aminata's personality. So the Great Mother is supposed to have given birth to the moon, which happens to be a birthmark on Aminata's face. The Great Mother is described as the giver of life. Aminata is a midwife ever since she's been a young kid, and she has 2 kids of her own, which are unfortunately taken away, but again, she is able to give life throughout the novel. Devotion and caring, so Aminata will stop at nothing to be free. So a quote here I have is, "Some say that I was once uncommonly beautiful, but I wouldn't wish beauty on any woman who has not her own freedom and who chooses not the hands that claim her." So this really shows that Aminata had devotion to the rights and freedom of black people, and she really wanted everyone to know about the inequalities within Africa and all around the world. So another quality that the Great Mother has is unconditional love. So she gives her kids all of her love, so when they're taken away, she's completely broken at the core. So a quote I found here was, "The pain of my losses never really went away, but I kept going. Somehow I just kept going." So this quote kind of talks about how Eminata was feeling after the loss of both of her children, but how she continued to keep going and pursuing the goal that she had. So now I have some questions for you guys to consider as you listen to what I've been saying, or maybe your own lives. So here they are. Where do you feel most protected? Is there anyone in your life that you feel gives you unconditional love? Who do you feel in your life has the most devotion to things or people? Who do you believe is a great mother figure in your life, or are there more than one? So the term the Great Mother likely came from a matriarchal society. So the word matriarchal comes from the Greek mater, mother, and archein, which is to rule. This is a social system in which females hold primary power, predominant in roles of political leadership, moral authority, social privilege, and control of property at the specific exclusion of men. So this can also be described as family, group, or state governed by a matriarch, so a woman who is the head of a family or a tribe. Most anthropologists hold that there are no known societies that are unambiguously matriarchal, but some authors believe exceptions may exist or may have. This idea was likely taken into consideration as the archetype the Great Mother was formed. But now that we live in a more patriarchal society, the role of the Great Mother has been passed on to our own mothers. A patriarchy is a social system in which family systems or entire societies are organized around the idea of father rule, where males are the primary authority figures. So just some questions for you guys to consider again. Which society do you think you would prefer, and which one do you believe would give the most freedom to everyone in society, so both men and women, and whether that's even possible for men and women to be equal in either of the societies? So as I continued my research, I came across many different figures that were said to be founded from the Great Mother archetype. First off, in ancient Rome religion, Ceres was a goddess of agriculture, grain crops, fertility, and motherly relationships. She was the daughter of Saturn and Ops, the sister of Jupiter, and the mother of Proserpine. Ceres was a goddess of the harvest and was credited with teaching humans how to grow, preserve, and prepare grain and corn. She was thought to be responsible for the fertility of the land. The Romans saw her as a counterpart of the Greek goddess Demeter. Demeter had very similar traits to Ceres, although Demeter is often described simply as a goddess of the harvest. She was also presided over the sacred law and the cycle of life and death. So another kind of archetype for the Great Mother that we have in this day and age is Mother Nature, of course. So she's a common personification of nature that focuses on the life-giving and nurturing aspects of nature by embodying it in the form of the mother. It also has been described as a guiding force of creation. So different religions have different meanings for what Mother Nature's qualities were, but they all agree that she was a bigger-than-life kind of figure. Finally, I wanted to find a Great Mother figure in today's day and age, so I decided to analyze some of the fairy tales we hear as young children. So the first Great Mother figure I thought of was the fairy godmother in Cinderella. She only seems to come when Cinderella is in desperate need, but provides her with protection, joy, and puts a little fun into her otherwise boring life. So I kind of found this fairy godmother is almost like a great mother in all of the qualities that she has. So just some questions for you guys now. Can you think of any other fictional figures that relate to the archetype of the Great Mother? So I'm going to leave you with this question. How do you believe that the Great Mother figure should be perceived in today's day and age? And do you believe that it is currently being perceived in the right way? I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you for listening, and goodbye. Some of the sources in this podcast were the Book of Negroes by Lawrence Hill, GreekMythology.com, Scribd, Archetypal Literary Criticism. This podcast is edited by Emma Carr, and music is also by Emma Carr.